At the edge of your network, time moves differently. Patches drift like redshifted signals. Passwords orbit forever. A domain controller from another era hums as if alone. Inside, threads of services trade secrets like starlight. Tickets, trusts, shares, we call it normal operations. It is surface tension. A single misconfiguration bends the field. Legacy protocol. A forgotten share. The attacker does not force entry. They follow gravity. Tonight we descend. Domains as galaxies. Trusts as wormholes. Controllers as singularities. We will map, exploit, and reinforce the fabric. Record, audit, listen, enter. Windows infrastructure. The first coordinates form. We fall. The universe of Windows infrastructure. We begin with a simple truth. Data has its own gravity. Windows infrastructure is not a diagram. It is a cosmos. Workgroups form dust. Domains ignite into stars. Forests bind into galaxies. Trusts tunnel like wormholes between them. Power BI does not simply show us. The directory defines us. Roles coalesce. Domain controllers as cores. FSMO roles as spin. DNS as navigation. Group policy as the laws that hold it all together. But time has its own opinion. Misconfigurations create curvature. Drift accumulates. Authentication bends around mass. Kerberos, NTLM tokens packs. Attackers do not rush. They listen for pressure gradients and fall along the easiest slope. We will move from the outer halo to the singular core. Enumeration as astronomy, privilege as fuel, credentials as radiation, and delegation as curved space. Each concept will arrive paired with its counterforce, hygiene, segmentation, baselines, monitoring. And in those rare moments, we will let the system speak for itself, a quiet chime when drift begins, a bass pulse when identity bends. The goal is not invincibility. The goal is orbit, stable, deliberate, sustained against fear and noise. From workgroup dust to domain galaxies, we start with a single machine, unjoined, unobserved. A workgroup host is a rock in the void. Local accounts, local policy, local truths. It survives by isolation or by luck. There is no shared sky, no central gravity. Every login is a coin toss against entropy. Add another machine, a printer server, a file share. Human habit begins to braid threads across them. Mapped drives, remembered passwords, a script that copies reports at midnight. Constraint appears. So does risk. This is proto-gravity, fragile, improvised. Then a domain arrives. Active Directory. Domain services is not a database. It is the mass that gives shape to the enterprise. We promote a server. It becomes a domain controller. At that moment, identity stops being provincial. It becomes interstellar. Authentication stops being a handshake. It becomes a curve. Domain controllers do not simply respond. They define. They hold the schema, the replication topology, the naming context. FSMO roles emerge like spins and tides. The schema master governs evolution. The domain naming master approves new worlds. The ARID master mints identities, ensuring no two stars share a name. The PDC emulator sets the clock, and therefore sets truth. Time drift is security drift. The infrastructure master maintains references, the quiet librarian of a growing galaxy. Move one carelessly and you change the tides. Lose one unknowingly and satellites begin to wobble. Member servers join the field. They are not peers, they are orbiters. They borrow authority from the core. Services resolve through DNS, which becomes the navigation system for everything alive. If DNS lies, everything follows. A poisoned map does not look dangerous until ships never arrive. In Windows, a misdirected SPN, a spoofed record, a stale glue entry. Each is a fold in the chart, a way to bend a traveler toward a trap. Forests form when separate domains share a root of trust. Trees anchor under common schema and configuration. Forests are galaxies, vast, internally transitive, opinionated about consistency. Across them, trusts create shortcuts through space. Some are forest trusts, grand and transitive. Some are external, brittle and non-transitive. Some are shortcuts, built to appease latency and human patience. Each trust is a wormhole, stable when engineered with care, chaotic when neglected. Every line of trust is a new gradient. Every gradient can be followed. Security does not fail with noise, it fails with inertia. We add a test trust for a merger that never closes. It remains. We create an external trust for a vendor integration. The vendor changes, the trust does not. The directory remembers everything. Attackers remember only what is useful. Group policy arrives as the laws of physics. Baselines define what is possible. Who can log on locally? Which protocols are allowed to speak? Whether signing is enforced? Whether passwords are bounded by entropy rather than tradition? When laws are miswritten, attackers do not argue. They obey with precision. A GPO that grants local admin to a temporary desktop support group outlives the person who created it. Gravity does not care about intent. Now, consider the roles again. Domain controllers are gravity wells. Their mass is credential validation, ticket issuance, directory integrity. Services orbit closer or farther based on privilege. A file server is a moon with resources. A print server is a satellite with side effects, often underdefended, often trusted more than it should be. An application server with an SPN is a bright star. It emits service tickets and therefore draws attention. If that star is configured with unconstrained delegation, it becomes a furnace. Tickets gather, TGTs flow, heat invites collapse. Member workstations are dust in the lanes. They carry cached trust, tokens in memory, sessions that care about convenience more than conservation. The local security authority holds the keyring. If left unshielded, it will share under pressure. Credential guard and LSA protection are not features, they are radiation shields. We must name the shapes so we can measure the drift. A forest can trust another forest. The wormhole is transitive. What is trusted inside one may leap across to the other. An external trust is a narrow tunnel. It does not grant transit beyond the far mouth. Shortcut trusts are bridges built to cross the chasm of latency. They often become smugglers' roads, and each trust has directionality. One way is a gate with a guard. Two-way is a celebration that never ends. Most people think security begins at the core, but they are wrong. It begins at the edge, where dust decides whether to gather. Account creation policies, naming discipline, group scopes, and the humility to keep tier small. These are acts of defiance against the unknown. We keep domain admin as myth, not as convenience. We keep service accounts bound by least privilege, not tradition. We keep the KRBTGT periodic reset as ritual, a calendared acknowledgement that secrets decay. Listen for the system's whisper, a low chime when drift begins. A trusted domain goes offline and nobody notices. A base pulse when identity bends. A service account added to backup operators just for a week. The map darkens, the gravity shifts, the next orbit begins. We anchor the picture. Work group dust, domain ignition, forest gravity, trust wormholes, group policy as physics, DNS as navigation, domain controllers as singularities. Each decision adds mass or removes it. Each exception changes curvature. And when Fabric lights them up on our horizon, we will see not chaos, but consequence. The universe still wants to be understood. Let us measure before we move. Let us map before we run. We have named the bodies. Now we chart the light. The critical services, stars in the core. We descend toward the core and find the constants that define motion. DNS, DHCP, directory services, file and print, group policy, each is not a feature. Each is a star. Their light sets the lanes. Their gravity decides what orbits and what falls. Start with DNS. It is not a phone book, it is navigation. Every Kerberos exchange, every SMB path, every policy retrieval begins by asking where reality lives. If DNS lies, everything follows. A poisoned record bends routes toward an attacker's shore. A stale SPN mapping points a service ticket at the wrong host and silently sabotages trust. Split-brain zones with careless scavenging cause phantom hosts to remain, and clients continue to orbit ghosts. In this universe, a single TXT record used for a forgotten validation remains an unguarded beacon. and a wildcard thought harmless becomes a dark lens that distorts resolution. Secure it as if it were the map itself, signed zones, tight update permissions, scavenging with intention, and collectors that notice when a critical host's address changes outside a maintenance tide. DHCP is breath. Leases are pulses. When scope options drift, clients inherit a future they did not choose. A rogue DHCP server does not shout. It whispers a default gateway that leads away from inspection and toward ambush. Option 15 points them into a domain that is not theirs. Option 6 hands them a resolver that edits the sky. Reservations become identity anchors. Neglect turns them into fossils that attract confusion. The defense is choreography, DHCP snooping, authenticated updates bound to DNS with GSST SIG, scope hygiene that refuses convenience, and a ledger that proves who promised the root. Active Directory Domain Services sits at the center, naming contexts, replication, the KDC's heartbeat. It is mass. The KDC issues TGTs like Stellar passports, then stamps service tickets that curve toward SPNs. But time has its own opinion. Stale KRBTGT secrets thicken the past into permanence. Replication topology ignored becomes split-brain reality. Lingering objects are debris that collide with truth when a tombstone threshold is crossed. We harden by ritual. Health checks that read replication as seismography. KRBTGT rotation as celestial mechanics, privileged access sealed to tier boundaries, and audits that verify the semantic layer, the groups, the rights, the delegations, reflect present intent, not ancestral habit. SMB and file servers are supply routes. They carry payloads, policies, tools, secrets disguised as convenience. A share labeled software becomes an uncurated nebula where unsigned binaries drift next to installers that request elevation. Scripts accumulate like comets. Someone adds credentials for automation, and suddenly gravity acquires a handle. SMB signing is not a checkbox, it is structural integrity. Without it, NTLM relays rewrite routes in flight. Access control lists are not bureaucracy, they are orbital fences. Least privilege is not minimalism, it is stable mechanics. Readers read, writers write, custodians curate, and no one combines roles without consequence. Print servers are the underestimated satellites with tidal influence. They sit near every workstation, trusted by necessity. Historically noisy, often patched last, they bridge user context and elevated service behavior. A spooler misconfigured becomes a relay mirror. A driver package signed in an age of lenience continues to install with ceremony. We contain by narrowing the blast cone, disable what is not required, isolate roles, force updates to occur within windows that are watched, and treat printer administration as a Tier 1 boundary, not an afterthought. Group policy is the law. It falls like gravity from the core to the edge. It is how we write the constants: password length, Kerberos hardening, SMB signing, script execution, LSA protection. But law can be forged. Link order and inheritance are rivers that can be dammed or diverted. A single high-precedence GPO created for a midnight rescue remains linked, overrides a baseline, and weakens the hull. We defend by publishing constitution in court. A baseline set sealed, change control that requires signatures, WMI filters that are documented, and a drift detector that compares policy as defined versus policy as applied. The universe still wants to be understood. Group policy is the language we use to define it. Now connect them. DNS tells us where. DHCP tells us how to breathe. Directory tells us who. SMB carries what. Print translates desire into matter. Group policy binds them with law. When one bends, the others accommodate. When two bend, the fabric ripples. When three bend, orbit decays. Listen for the signs. A low chime when drift begins. A DNS record for a controller shifts outside change windows. A bass pulse when identity bends. A GPO link appears at the domain root with authenticated users granted apply. Sysmon murmurs when a workstation reaches into LSASS with new intent. Event 4769 clusters when service tickets spike for a service that does not see new demand. The map darkens. Our response is not panic, it is physics. We sign, we segment, we baseline, we monitor. We accept that convenience is gravity and that every exception adds mass. We choose structure over folklore. We hold the constants so that everything else can move without falling. And the next orbit begins. Threat actors as astrophysicists. We speak of services and stars, but there are minds that study their motion and exploit their curves. Threat actors are not always loud invaders. They are often patient astronomers. They watch, they measure drift, they wait for gravity to do the work. At the edge are the opportunists, script-driven raiders who trawl the public sky for open ports and default configurations. They are comets, bright, brief, destructive by inertia. They copy, paste, collide, and leave debris. Their power is volume. Their weakness is noise. Baselines and sane defaults repel them like magnetic fields. Closer in are ransomware crews. They are engineers of entropy. They hunt for a foothold, then convert identity into leverage. Living off the land is their method. PowerShell as solar wind, WMI as silent thrust, PS remoting as a glide path. They chart shares, harvest scripts, map local admin reuse, and assemble the past the hash constellation until movement becomes inevitable. They do not need 0 days when misconfiguration is constant gravity. Their signature is acceleration, from a quiet credential to an orchestral shutdown. We counter not with theatrical defenses but with friction, lapse rotation, SMB signing, local firewall rules that starve east-west traffic, and privileged access that refuses to exist on workstations. Then there are the state-aligned operators. They are patient physicists. They do not prize destruction. They prize persistence. They catalog trusts, name constraints, and study Kerberos delegation like orbital mechanics. A stale KRBTGT is not merely a weakness, it is time frozen into fuel. An unconstrained delegation service is not simply misconfigured, it is a gravitational slingshot. They move slowly, often under the event horizon of routine. Their art is ambiguity. Normal process chains, plausible service queries, innocent tickets. Detection must therefore be relational, not singular, correlation across accounts, services, and hours, looking for curvature that cannot be faked. Inside our own galaxies, we find internal red teams. They are friendly constellations, engineered to stress our laws without tearing them. They pressure test the hull. They whisper truths the universe already knows. Local privilege escalation remains common when services run with lax permissions. Backup operators can mint power if left unguarded. Printers and management servers are too often satellites with hidden tidal pull. When they find a path to domain admin, they hold up a mirror. The reflection is not flattery, it is governance. Insiders are the dark matter, not always malicious, often careless, sometimes hurried. A saved password in a script. A temporary GPO link left at the root. A service account created with domain admin because the change window was closing. Their fingerprints are everywhere because their intentions were practical. We must govern intention. Least privilege is not a moral demand. It is physics. Consequence scaled down so collapse remains improbable. Tools are not villains. PowerShell is a spectrum. WMI is a bus, PSEC is a courier. They are neutral particles. Our task is to read their behavior in context. A burst of remote service creation across subnets at midnight is not an accident. An unusual Kerberos service ticket requested for a high-value SPN by an account that never touched it before is not curiosity. Event relationships form constellations. We read them as astronomers, not romantics. Dwell time is time dilation. The longer an intruder orbits without detection, the more their influence normalizes. What once felt like an anomaly begins to look like tide. This is drift. This is why baselines cannot be aspirational. They must be measured. We enforce Kerberos hardening, retire NTLM v1, enforce channel binding, protect LSASS, and seal tier with ritual. The law must be gravity, not suggestion. And now the lab echoes begin. The system whispers when hands move. Low chime. Windows security 4769 clusters for a service that did not change. A curve forms. Base pulse. Sysmon event 10. A process reaches for LSASS with unusual intent. Soft tick. A GPO link appears where no change was scheduled. We listen, we name the force, we correct the orbit. To exploit a universe, you do not start at the core. You start by mapping the stars. Mapping the constellations. We narrow our eyes and let the light reach us. Reconnaissance is not noise, it is astronomy. We do not pound on doors, we read the sky. We begin with distant light, open ports as spectral lines. 53, 88, 135, 139, 389, 445, 5985, 338, each reveals composition. DNS speaks first, Kerberos answers in mathematics, SMB hums with cargo. Banner hints become roles. Timing becomes topology. The map is not a picture, it is a probability field. Then we read the star charts, the directory. We ask careful questions with LDAP and PowerShell. Who are we? Which groups claim us? Which SPNs beckon with service? Which service accounts stand too tall? We trace edges, users to groups, groups to rights, rights to sessions, sessions to hosts. A single low-privilege account becomes a beacon. The graph unfurls into paths. We do not push. We let gravity show the routes already carved by habit. Defense speaks in boundaries. East-west segmentation dims needless horizons. RDP gates narrow approach vectors. Admin contexts separate into tiers so that noise at the edge never shakes the core. Least privilege reduces mass. Cleaning dead accounts removes debris. Drift detectors watch for new edges forming where none should exist. The lab echoes guide rhythm. Low chime. Directory answers a query. A group we forgot still grants right. Base pulse. A spike in 4769 flows to a neglected SPN. Soft tick. A bloodhound-style path count rises. Edges multiply. Risk condenses. We will map. And when the map darkens, we will know where to land softly and where to refuse gravity. Light from distant hosts. Network mapping. We begin at distance. We let photons arrive. We do not announce ourselves. We measure. A quiet sweep across the horizon reveals spectral lines, ports as elements, latency as distance, banners as temperature. 53, 88, 135, 139, 389, 445, 50985, 3389. Each emission tells us what burns beneath the surface. DNS answers like a lighthouse. Kerberos replies in pure mathematics. RPC flickers with orchestration. SMB hums with cargo traffic. WinRM exhales management heat. RDP glows in the visible band. Most people think port scans are noise, but they are wrong. A disciplined map is seismography. We sample slowly to avoid disturbing the crust. A handful of packets per second, randomized timing, varied source ports to avoid resonance. We read responses like star charts, open, closed, filtered. The pattern sketches coastline. The coastline reveals where gravity concentrates. DNS first, because navigation precedes motion. A real resolver answers consistently, with authoritative edges and sane TTLs. A poisoned one hesitates, leaks recursion it should not, or advertises split reality without symmetry. We ask for SRV records and watch which domain controllers step into the light. Their responses show site topology hidden inside service announcements. Anomalies mean either drift or deception. Either one is curvature. Kerberos on 88 is not merely open or closed. Its timing spreads like a Doppler shift. In healthy space, a KDC replies with steady cadence. Under strain or misplacement, replies lengthen at edges, as if light climbing out of gravity. We request pre-authentication for harmless principles. We do not break, we listen. If a response comes from an unexpected host, a trust wormhole may be closer than it appears. LDAP on 389 and 636 is the living directory surface. We do not enumerate yet, we test behavior. Start TLS capability announced but never honored indicates misaligned law. Anonymous binds disabled is a good sign. But if a device answers as LDRP, that is not a domain controller, we have found a proxy moon that bends queries out of sight. That is a path an attacker will prefer. That is a path we must name. SMB on 445 is a supply artery. The handshake speaks its own dialect. Does it promise signing or shrug? Does it support dialects that should be fossils? Does NTLM whisper when Kerberos should sing? We read negotiation. We infer policy. And if we witness the printer spooler's reflex on 445 or 135 RPC calls, that should be quiet. We mark it as tidal influence that can be abused if left near the core. WinRM on 5985 and 5986 is administration's breath. If it answers broadly across subnets, identity can drift quickly. If it is bound tightly to management enclaves, movement will be slower, more deliberate. The header identifies the host's opinion of itself, product versions, cipher preferences, the signatures of time. A cluster reveals standard images. Outliers betray ad hoc machines that do not share gravity. RDP on 3389 is a lens. Network-level authentication is the glass that refuses casual fingerprints. Without NLA, the surface accepts touches from anything that finds it. We observe the security layer chosen, the certificate offered, the presence of restricted admin. When RDP blooms across servers that should never be touched directly, we know convenience has replaced law. Lab echo, low chime. Spectrum sweep complete. 1,942 hosts responded. Port clusters align with 3 subnets. 445 open on 71%. 5985 open on 18%. Outliers detected. Now defense speaks because maps demand boundaries. We segment east-west, not as art, but as physics, gravity wells in their own subnets with firewalls that understand identity. Domain controllers speak only the protocols they must. File servers do not accept WinRM from workstations. Management traffic writes corridors with gates that log every crossing. RDP tunnels through bastions that apply multi-factor as atmosphere. We reduce reflexes. SMB signing enforced so relays cannot rewrite routes mid-flight. NTLM v1 retired, LM forgotten, channel binding asserted so tokens cannot be stolen and worn elsewhere. Local administrator reuse starved by password uniqueness. Rotation as heartbeat. Lapse as the metronome. Service accounts lose their sprawl. They gain least privilege orbits with constrained permissions. We sample again, slower still. The map stabilizes. Banners align. Timing narrows. Outliers remain. They always do. Those outliers become our next coordinates. Base pulse. Kerberos timing spike. 2 responders lag behind site norms. Possible miss-sighted controllers. Soft tick. RDP without NLA on a management subnet. Certificate expired. Gravity slackening. We annotate the chart. We do not rush the core. We respect the speed of light. Because everything that follows, enumeration, privilege, theft, or defense, depends on this honesty. The sky tells the truth if we are patient. We are patient. Reading the star charts. AD enumeration. We turn from distant light to the atlas itself. The directory is not a list, it is a field. We ask questions softly. We listen for shape. We begin with identity. Who are we? The bind is a handshake with gravity. A simple query returns our user object. Its SID, the stellar coordinate. Its UPN, the constellation name. Group memberships follow like orbital rings. Global, domain local, universal. Scope is not cosmetic. Scope defines how mass transfers across borders. A universal group carries influence across forest space. A domain local concentrates power near a resource. We record each ring without judgment. Influence is cumulative. Paths form where rings overlap. We widen. What rights do those rings imply? Read on this share, write on that OU, log on locally here but not there. Rights are vectors. We map them as edges. Group to permission, permission to target. A printer operator on a quiet server might imply service management rights that, chained carefully, become local administrator elsewhere. We do not assume, we verify. Access paths are physics, not folklore. Service principal names appear like bright stars. HTTPL Finance, MSQL Server 42, CF's files do2. Each SPN indicates a ticket can be minted for a service, and therefore that credentials might be requested, cached, or mishandled. Overprivileged service accounts burn too hot. If they hold domain admin or write access to sensitive OUs, their light distorts the map. We note service accounts that are trusted to delegate. Unconstrained delegation is a furnace. Constrained delegation is a lens with rules. Resource-based constraint delegation is a mirror turned inward. Each changes curvature, each demands measurement. We ask for administrators, but not just the domain admins group. We follow the lineage, nested groups, built-ins, anomalies. Who has CDebug privilege on critical servers by GPO? Who sits in backup operators, a quiet orbit with tidal power over secrets? Who owns the KRBTGT rotation ritual? Authority is often disguised as maintenance. We surface it. We read the OU structure like tectonic plates. Tiered boundaries should appear as separate continents, workstations grouped apart from servers, DCs isolated. If we find a single GPO linked high that grants broad rights to authenticated users, the law is compromised. We note empty OUs with lingering links, the tombstones of projects. Drift accumulates in the spaces nobody visits. We sample password hygiene without guessing. Age distributions tell a story. A cluster of accounts with non-expiring passwords forms a cold cloud. Service principals, vendors, ghosts. Fine-grained password policies reveal where entropy improves and where tradition refuses. If privileged users are not bound by stricter policies, gravity is misallocated. We inspect trust objects. External, forest, shortcut. Directionality matters. Selective authentication should be the gate in two-way trusts. Authenticated users should not pass without scrutiny. SID filtering disabled is a rupture, allowing forged history to cross the wormhole. If any trust predates the last era of governance reviews, we mark it as an at-risk tunnel. We do not enumerate to collect, we enumerate to model. The graph takes form, users to groups, groups to rights, rights to sessions, sessions to hosts. We add session data where we can. Who is logged on where? Which admin has a habit of opening management tools from a workstation at lunch? Habit is gravity's accomplice. A single high-value identity appearing on a low-trust host is a mass transfer event. We mark it with a base pulse in our minds. Lab echo, low chime. Directory responded 4,312 users, 6,981 computers, 1,204 groups. Universal groups 37, non-expiring passwords 112. We pivot to detection in the same breath. Enumeration should be symmetric. What an attacker can see, a defender must pre-compute. Maintain a living map of privileged paths. Prune groups that inherited power by accident. Retire unused SPNs. Reduce delegation to necessity. Enforce protected users for the identities that cannot fail. If you cannot remove NTLM entirely, at least ensure SMB signing and channel binding so the fossil cannot be weaponized. We set alerts on curvature, not noise. Unusual TGS patterns for sensitive SPNs. Event 4769 spikes outside maintenance windows. New admin group memberships. Event 4728 and 4732 when no cab meets. Directory replication access. Event 4662 with DS replication get changes when only backup service accounts should breathe there. Seisman murmurs when a process reaches for LSASS. Event 10 with intent. We do not wait for collapse. We listen for precession. We close the atlas with humility. The directory told us where it bends. Our task is to remove mass where we can, add fences where we must, and instrument the sky so drift becomes sound. Base pulse. The next orbit begins. Scripted segment. You walk the graph. You begin with a dim credential, a regular user, no symbols of power, a single SED adrift. You ask softly, who am I? The directory replies with minimal mass, one user object, a primary group, a few nested rings, home folder, mailbox, nothing that glows. The silence feels safe, but time has its own opinion. You widen the lens. Who trusts the groups that trust me? Edges form. A departmental group appears, granted read on a file share where scripts accumulate. A quiet comet labeled deploy holds a plain text credential meant to speed a midnight fix. The credential belongs to a service account. Low chime. Directory speaks. Service account. Interactive logon permitted. Logon servers. MGMT02 APP07. The gravity sharpens. That service account carries local administrator on 3 neighboring hosts. Convenience enacted during a crisis, never revoked. You step onto MGMT-02, not by force, but by invitation already written into ACLs. On its surface, sessions glitter. One belongs to a backup operator who once ran a restore and kept the habit. Base pulse. Sysman whispers. Event 10. Process seeking LSASS. Handle denied by policy. The shield holds today, but the pattern is visible. You do not smash. You listen. You follow the orbit labeled backup operators. In Windows, that orbit tides secrets. It can load drivers, read volumes, copy the registry hives that remember. A short path appears, backup operator to registry to cached secrets to lateral movement under the guise of maintenance. The universe suggests you confirm. You trace SPNs like bright stars, MSSQL, Ledger 01, CIFS, ShareCore, HTTP, Finance. Tickets are passports, requests leave trails, Event 4769 clusters for HTTP Finance at hours when Finance sleeps. That means service access where service should dream. Either automation went feral or someone borrowed the light. You mark it. Soft tick, telemetry murmurs, edges, 182 paths to DA found. The graph is not a threat. It is a weather report. You pivot from services to delegation. Unconstrained is heat. Constrained is engineered light. Resource-based is a mirror with rules. You see an aging application server trusted for unconstrained delegation. It received its blessing when the vendor promised no risk. It kept it when the vendor forgot. That server can hold TGTs for those who visit. Administrators once visited to debug an outage. Their tokens orbited within memory. You note the curvature. If the furnace is breached, it emits passports. Not a 0 day. A 0 care low chime. Directory replies to a controlled query. KRBTGT password last set. 2,281 days ago. Starlight from the past. If someone minted a ticket forged from yesterday's secret, the present might still accept it as fate. You mark the ritual overdue. Reset twice, measured and verified. You walk the trust objects. One external. One shortcut, one forest. Selective authentication disabled on the shortcut that spans convenience. SED filtering relaxed for a vendor era that ended 2 reorganizations ago. The wormhole remains open, passing history across without friction. You write a note in gravity. If collapse begins, it will begin here. You lean into habit because habit is the true credential. Session data shows a domain admin touching a management server at lunch from a workstation that should be Tier 2. 1 appearance can be an accident. 3 is ritual. That ritual creates mass transfer. A high-value token arrives where low-value processes breathe. Even with defenses, the curvature is wrong. You do not accuse. You annotate. Then you plan to remove every reason for that ritual to exist. Base pulse. A bloodhound-style path highlights user, department group, write to script share, service credential, local admin chain, management server, cached ticket, DC adjacent reach. No lock picked, no door broken. Gravity did the work. You close the loop with defense pronounced in the language of physics. Reduce edges, remove, write from the script share for humans who only read. Rotate the service credential, bind it to least privilege, deny interactive logon, and audit where it breathes. Enforce lapse to sever shared local admin constellations. Push SMB signing so relays cannot bend routes. Retire the unconstrained furnace. Replace it with resource-based constrained delegation tied to exact services, not a hope. Reset KRBTGT twice. Seal tier behind pause. Train habit with gates, not scolding. The directory does not hide. It whispers. Enumeration is not a threat. It is a confession the system makes to anyone patient enough to hear it. And once you know the paths, you do not need to move loudly. You just fall. Oh, breaking orbits. We arrive at a single endpoint, the place where ordinary work becomes extraordinary leverage. A compromised workstation is not a breach. It is a launch pad. Local privilege is thrust. Credential material is fuel. Lateral movement is trajectory. We break orbits in 3 gravitational moves. First, the local climb, services with weak permissions, unquoted paths, access rights in quiet groups like backup operators or print operators. We do not need names of vulnerabilities to know the pattern. Misconfiguration accelerates mass. Second, we read memory's heat. LSASS is the keyring. SSPs are the dialects. Tickets and hashes are condensed power. If wdigest sleeps, we let it sleep. If LSA protection stands, we honor it. If the shield is missing, attackers will ask the keyring to sing. We answer by hardening. Credential guard, run SPPL, restricted debug, no admin sessions on untrusted hosts. Third, we respect time's verdict. A server from 2016 that never learned new laws is a pocket where time dilates. Patches do not arrive. Protocols remain generous. That machine bends the field around it. We isolate or retire, or we compensate with walls and watchers. Low chime. Elevation attempt blocked by service DACL. Base pulse. Sysmin event 10 denied. The fabric speaks when we let it. Everything changes when the initial thrust meets structure. If the edges are many, movement is easy. If the edges are few, movement is noisy. In the next segments, we will climb, we will attempt to read memory, and we will decide whether the orbit breaks or holds. The next orbit begins. From user to local admin, we stand on a workstation surface. Ordinary gravity, ordinary permissions. A user clicks, types, saves. Nothing blazes. But local privilege is not a crown, it is momentum. And momentum comes from frictionless paths carved long ago. We look for the first slope, services. In Windows, a service is an engine strapped to the hull. If its binary path contains spaces and lacks quotes, the system resolves greedily, stopping at the first executable fragment. That is an unquoted service path. If a low-privilege user can write into that directory, they can slide a payload into the resolution. On next start, the engine burns the wrong fuel. Elevation without ceremony. We do not guess, we measure. Service configuration is a map of intent meeting file system truth. Then we test the bolts. Service permissions. A service with a generous DACL lets ordinary users change its binary, its start mode, or its account. When that happens, gravity is inverted. A quiet user can rewire a trusted engine to run their code as local system. Not a 0 day, a zero discipline in DACLs. The defense lives where it began. Correct ACLs on services and their binaries. Configuration, drift detectors that shout when a startup path changes, and a rule that services run under least privileged accounts with write-protected binaries. We examine the local constellations, groups, backup operators, print operators, power users that survived an earlier era. These rings look harmless because they are not administrators by name. But Windows remembers history. Backup operators can load drivers, read volumes, and touch the registry hives where secrets congeal. Print operators can manage services and drivers that run in elevated space. One misapplied membership bestows tidal influence. We cut these rings to purpose. Memberships are documented, justified, time-bound, and reviewed on a cadence that feels like ritual. Lab echo, low chime. Service query returned. 3 vulnerable paths. Write access detected in C program files vendor appians. Base pulse. Service DACL allows start, stop, change, config for authenticated users. The fabric speaks. We answer. Now, known vulnerabilities without naming them. Privilege escalation is a pattern. Unsigned drivers accepted without scrutiny. Scheduled tasks with world-writable actions. Hijackable DLL search orders when a process looks in a writable directory first. The specific identifier changes with season. The physics remains. A high-privilege process trusts a low-privilege location. Our counterforce is mechanical. Block unsigned kernel code, restrict who can load drivers, monitor new scheduled tasks with administrative principles, and fix search paths so binaries and DLLs come from read-only constellations. We step into the registry and file system looking for writable edges near the core. If program files, System32 siblings, or service directories allow non-admin rights, the hull is already thin. We set inheritance to sanity, audit for explicit grants that deviate from baselines, and stamp golden images so mispermissions cannot replicate like spores. We read habit because habit bends everything. Developers installed compilers and debuggers on servers for a quick fix and never removed them. Those tools are not evil, they are leverage. On a workstation, a local user with a compiler and a writable service path can manufacture their ladder the moment curiosity arrives. We dry that fuel. No compilers on servers, no ad hoc tool caches in privileged directories, application control to require signatures and publishers we trust. Credential material is nearby, but we hold the line. Local admin is a gate before memory. If the local administrator password is shared across machines, pass the hash turns one gate into many. We sever that constellation with lapse or an equivalent rotation ritual. Unique secrets per host, rotation as heartbeat, audit as astronomy. Who used the local admin account, from where and why? We cast the baseline as law, not suggestion. CIS and Microsoft security baselines are not paperwork. They are orbital parameters. They harden services, disable legacy reflexes, constrain rights. We do not paste them blindly. We test, then enforce, then watch. Drift detectors compare current state to intended gravity and speak when the difference grows. We rehearse hygiene, regularly scan for local privilege escalation patterns, not to collect trophies, but to delete the slopes. Patch cadence becomes a metronome. Servers and workstations learn new laws promptly. When legacy software resists, we isolate it behind walls and watches, or we retire it. Isolation is not punishment. It is respect for physics we cannot change. Lab echo, soft tick. Local group membership audit, backup operators contains SVC backup 01 and user J. Sato. That name matters. Humans make systems bend. We remove what is not justified. We time-bound what remains. We alert when gravity returns, without approval. We close with a principle. Local admin should be rare, reversible, and recent. Rare, because most tasks do not need it. Reversible, because just-in-time rights expire. Recent, because standing privilege decays into habit and habit into breach. GEA for PowerShell. Temporary elevation with approvals. Session recording where law permits. A PO for the hands that must touch servers. And a boundary. No administrative hands on untrusted hosts ever. Low chime. Elevation attempt thwarted. Change service config denied. Base pulse fades. The orbit holds. Reading memory, LSASS, and the keyring. We descend into the chamber where identity condenses into metal. The local security authority is not a process. It is the keyring. In its memory live the proofs we trade for access. Kerberos tickets, NTLM secrets, cache tokens, and the structures that bind them, the security support providers that speak the dialects of trust. Power BI does not simply show us. LSASS enforces who we are allowed to become. When it is naked, gravity fails. Kerberos breathes here. Ticket granting tickets, once minted by the KDC, rest as heat. Renewable within policy, convertible into service tickets without asking passwords again. NTLM persists as a fossil dialect. If policy permits, challenge responses and cached secrets remain within reach. The credential manager keeps convenience close. Saved web creds, mapped drive tokens, enterprise SSO residues. Each convenience is mass. Each mass can be moved if rules allow hands too near the ring. Security support providers are the translators. Kerberos, NTLM, Negotiate, CredSSP, amid others. They register within LSASS so logons and delegations have a voice. When legacy SSPs linger, when WDigest is enabled for compatibility, when third-party providers install with generous hooks, memory becomes a market. Opponents do not need passwords, they need handles. A read is enough to become you. This is why shield patterns matter. LSA protection run SPPL hardens LSASS into a protected process. When enforced, Only signed, trusted, specifically permitted code can request the handles that reveal secrets. Without it, any process with cdebug privilege or clever indirection can ask the keyring to sing. Credential guard isolates long-lived secrets within virtualization boundaries. LSASS becomes a mediator rather than a vault with an open door. The difference is gravitational. With shields, read attempts bend and break. Without shields, time dilates and secrets leak. Low chime. Seisman event 10, handle request to LSASS from windward, ICSI, access denied by PPL. That is the sound of a shield absorbing a particle. The base pulse recedes, but time has its own opinion. On a legacy host where LSA protection is not present, or where wdigest was once toggled for a vendor and never reversed, memory contains clear text that should never have existed. If administrators log on interactively to that host, high-value tokens orbit within the same gravity as untrusted processes. A tool does not need to be exotic, it needs to be adjacent. The path is physics: obtain local admin, request handles, read memory, serialize secrets, move sideways. We counter with ritual and boundaries. First, remove the fuel. Disable wdigest by policy and verify the registry aligns with intent. Deny interactive logon to service, accounts, and tier identities on anything but privileged access workstations. Require restricted admin for RDP into servers where possible, so reusable credentials do not land. Block process injection tools and unsigned drivers. The kernel is the last sky. Do not let it accept foreign stars. Second, constrain proximity. Isolate admin sessions. The hands that hold domain power must never touch untrusted terrain. If an admin must fix a workstation, the tool reaches in. The admin does not step out. Just enough administration defines the verbs. Just in time grants the time window. Session recording captures the light trail. The goal is not surveillance. It is physics. Prevent high-mass tokens from descending into low-trust wells. Third, instrument memory. Sysmon event 10 alerts when a process asks for LSASS with suspicious intent. Pair it with event 1 to map parentage. Office apps should not birth credential readers. Add event 7 for image loads. When an unexpected SSP DLL wedges into LSASS, the sky has been altered. Windows security logs add context. 4624 logons that bring admin SADs into places they should not be. 4672 privileges assigned where maintenance is not scheduled. Correlate. Curvature emerges only when lines intersect. Lab echo. Soft tick. Security 4624. Logon type 10 to server core app 03 by admin SVC deploy. Base pulse, Sysmon 7, new SSP module loaded, legacy digest, Elton. The fabric shudders. This is not an exploit. This is permission granted by neglect. Credential guard is a boundary in time. Where supported, enable it. It does not make theft impossible, but it raises the energy required. Hashes and TGT material move behind virtualization. Pass the hash becomes an exercise in frustration. Ticket diffusion slows. Pair it with protected users for critical identities, so NTLM usage is refused, TGT lifetimes shorten, and delegation declines unless explicitly permitted. Now we revisit habit. If developers or operators run browsers, email, or chat on servers, cookies and tokens collect near LSASS, like dust around a magnet. Web SSO credentials escape the intended sphere and offer federated power where only local control should exist. Remove browsers from servers. Force administrative work through PLBs with hardened profiles, no personal apps, and policies that starve convenience. We also revisit error handling as a signal. When an attacker attempts to read LSASS and fails because run as PPL stands, do not celebrate silently. Alert. Investigate the process tree, user, and source. False positives exist, but physics does not produce noise without cause. Either a security product probed legitimately or a tool searched for doors. Tune, then trust the pattern. Defense sounds like law, but it behaves like orbit. Apply the MS and CIS baselines that set LSA protection, credential guard, and SSP hygiene. Remove legacy providers, enforce driver signing, deny CDBug privilege to every account that does not bear it by necessity. If an application demands exceptions, isolate it behind walls and watchers and schedule its eradication like decommissioning a collapsing star. Low chime. LSASS protected. W-digest disabled. Cred guard enabled. The base softens. The keyring remains a keyring, not a fountain. We ascend. Memory still holds heat, but it is arranged. Identity bends, but within boundaries. We did not remove gravity. We taught it restraint, time dilation, patches, and technical debt. Time does not pass evenly in an enterprise. It stretches around legacy. It compresses around urgency. A 2016 server that never learned new laws does not sit in the present. It drags the present backward. That is time dilation. The longer we allow it, the heavier it becomes. Technical debt is not a bill. It is gravity. Each exception adds mass. A postponed reboot, a deferred cumulative update, a driver pinned to an older kernel, a vendor requirement that demanded temporary registry edits. Individually, they seem trivial. Together, they warp authentication, alter negotiation, and open paths attackers do not have to force. They merely step where time slowed. Consider the stack. A domain member with outdated patches still advertises NTLM behaviors we thought retired. Channel binding never enabled, SMB signing optional, RPC endpoints exposing methods with weak verification. None of this requires an exploit in the cinematic sense. It requires only the courage to ask in the dialect that machine still understands. And when privileged humans visit, when an admin RDPs in just for a quick look, their fresh tokens orbit an old gravity. That is how the past steals the present. Low chime. Update baseline drift, 47 servers behind by 90 plus days. 3 domain controllers outside secure channel patch cadence. Base pulse. Event 4769 anomalies correlate with unpatched SPN hosts. The fabric reports the obvious. Time is not neutral. We push back with ritual. Patch cadence is the metronome that resets physics. It is not a heroic sprint every quarter. It is a drumbeat. Evaluation on day, lab validation by day 2, pilot by day 7, broad deployment by day 14, exceptions documented with a sunset. Out-of-band fixes for identity and remote execution are emergencies, not negotiable calendar items. We do not wait for change windows to align with fate. We shape windows to respect gravity. But time has its own opinion about reality. Some systems cannot move fast. Industrial controllers that hang on brittle drivers. Line of business servers with vendors who treat updates as existential threats. Here we choose one of 3 paths. Retire. Decommission where business allows, because dead mass cannot bend the future. Isolate. Quarantine behind identity-aware firewalls, deny inbound administration except through bastions, and restrict egress so a compromised legacy box cannot shout. Compensate. Enforce SMB signing. Force TLS 1.2+. Enable Sysmon. Deploy application control, and wrap the host with monitoring that treats any privilege expansion as a siren. We document as gravity, not guilt. A risk register is not theater. It is a map of where time runs slow. Each entry lists controls applied, identities allowed, and a date when the star must go dark. Leadership does not fear schedules. They fear surprises. Show them orbit decay in plain numbers. Patch age, event correlations, lateral attempts blocked by policy. Provide cost to stabilize versus cost to ignore. The universe still wants to be understood. So does a budget. We defend identity against old clocks. KRBTGT rotation twice per cycle ensures that even if a golden ticket was forged in a prior age, it loses power when the secrets change. Enforce protected users for critical admins so their sessions refuse NTLM and delegation even on older hosts that try to tempt them. Require RDP-restricted admin and PAWs so credentials never cross into unpatched memory. Telemetry must speak in tense, not merely what happened, but what happened on a clock that lags. Tag hosts by patch cohort. Correlate event 4768 and 4769 spikes with cohort labels. If older cohorts correlate with anomalies, you have proof of curvature. Sysmon events from outdated kernels deserve higher suspicion scores. A login to a legacy print server by a tier identity should be a page, not a report. Lab echo, soft tick. Cohort report. Patch cohort C emits 61% of suspicious LSASS handle attempts. Cohort A emits 5%. The numbers are not drama. They are gravity made audible. We fix drift by making time visible. Dashboards that show patch velocity by business owner. SLA agreements that treat identity patches as production uptime, because they are. Change boards that understand the physics. A weekend outage to update KDCs prevents a week-long outage after collapse. Tabletop exercises that stage a domain controller compromise and walk leadership through forest recovery. Practice turns fear into competence. Finally, we change habit. Exceptions expire by default. Service accounts receive maintenance windows to rotate secrets like tides. GPOs enforce modern protocols and refuse to be moved except by ceremony. And we teach a culture that sees temporary as a threat, not a favor. Low chime. Legacy exception closed. Bass pulse diminishes. Time resumes its proper pace. We do not chase every patch as panic. We set a rhythm. We honor it. And when an old star refuses, we either put it behind glass or watch it collapse on our terms, not the universe's. The next orbit begins at the center, or gravity wells and trusts. In every Windows universe, there is a mass at the center, the domain controller. Authentication curves around it. Authorization descends from it. Kerberos and NTLM are the languages its gravity speaks. Trusts are wormholes that connect galaxies to one another for convenience or catastrophe. We will read Kerberos as curved space, KDC to TGT to TGS, SPNs as stars that tick its orbit, delegation as lenses that bend identity. Unconstrained delegation is a furnace. Constrained delegation is engineered light. Resource-based constrained delegation is a mirror with rules. Each changes curvature. Each must be chosen, not inherited. We will treat NTLM as fossil gravity. Useful in rare caves, dangerous in open sky. Relays exploit unsigned lanes. Old dialects betray modern intent. We do not shame legacy, we confine it. Trusts will be our wormholes. Forest, external, shortcut. Directionality, selective authentication, SID filtering. Stable when designed, treacherous when forgotten. We will harden gates and monitor crossings. Low chime. Event 4769 drift clusters near finance SPNs. Base pulse. Unusual TGT lifetimes detected. We listen because the fabric speaks before it tears. We descend now toward the well. Kerberos as curved space. Kerberos is not a handshake, it is geometry. Identity bends across a field, and the KDC defines the curvature. We begin at the singularity, the key distribution center, living inside each domain controller. When you authenticate, you do not receive permission. You receive potential, your ticket-granting ticket. The TGT is a compact star. It holds your SID, group SIDs, a lifetime, flags, and a signature sealed by the KRBTGT secret that only the KDC can wield. To every other service, that seal is invisible. To the KDC, it is truth spoken in mathematics. With a TGT, you request light. Service tickets, TGS, are photons bent toward a destination. You ask for CIFS on a file server, MS-SQL on a ledger box, HTTP on a finance app. The KDC examines your TGT's contents, consults policy, and mints a service ticket encrypted with the service's long-term key. The server cannot read your TGT. It reads only what the KDC wrote for it. This is the first law. Services trust the KDC's memory of you, not your word. Service principal names mark the stars. HTTP Finance, MSSQL, Ledger 01, CFS, Share Core. Each SPN is a coordinate where tickets can land. When SPNs point at accounts with broad power, the gravity distorts. A service account with write rights to sensitive OUs or membership in high groups turns routine access into a lens that magnifies risk. We prune SPNs, constrain rights, and name owners because unnamed light becomes heat. Delegation is how identity passes through lenses. Unconstrained delegation is a furnace. The service receives your ticket and may request tickets to anything on your behalf. If a privileged user touches that furnace, their TGT may rest in memory, convertible into access across the universe. Constrained delegation is engineered light. The service can act for you only toward designated SPNs. Resource-based constrained delegation reverses the perspective. The target service declares who may impersonate to it. Each mode defines how far identity can travel without consulting you again. Choose care over convenience. Lab echo. Low chime. TGS issuance spike. HTTP finance outside change window. Base pulse. Delegation path discovered. App old has unconstrained trust. The field ripples before it tears. Attackers do not break Kerberos, they harvest what drift permits. If SPNs are owned by accounts with weak passwords, requesting their service tickets produces ciphertext eligible for offline guessing. We do not describe the ritual, we correct the physics. Privileged service accounts must use long, random secrets and, where possible, managed service accounts that rotate by design. Monitor event 4769 patterns that spike for sensitive SPNs, especially from principals that historically never asked. Abuse of delegation follows curvature. An unconstrained server becomes a token magnet. An attacker who obtains local admin there can read the furnace and convert visiting administrators into passports. We cool the surface, remove unconstrained delegation from anything but edge relays that terminate in isolation, use constrained delegation with protocol transition only where audited, and favor resource-based constrained delegation to pin who may speak for whom. We deny interactive logon to service accounts, so human heat never bathes the furnace. The KRB-TGT secret is time. If it goes stale, forged TGTs from a past era may still be honored by controllers that never learned the new song. We reset KRB-TGT twice in a controlled window with replication observed, tickets allowed to age out between rotations. This is a ritual, not a reaction. When a forest trembles, we perform it again after eviction. PAC data, authorization claims inside tickets, carries group memberships and privileges, signed by the KDC. Services that validate PAC signatures ask the KDC to confirm the seal when uncertain. When validation is lax, injected claims masquerade as truth. Enable PAC signature validation for sensitive services and log failures like gravitational anomalies. When a service claims a user belongs to a group they never joined, the sky is lying. Time remains, the quiet tyrant. Kerberos lifetimes, skew tolerance, and renewal windows define how long light persists. Short lifetimes reduce the window for ticket theft to matter. Excessively short lifetimes induce thrash. Excessively long lifetimes tolerate drift. Critical identities benefit from stricter horizons. Protected users limit delegation and reduce lifetime. Pair with MFA at interactive entry so TGT minting itself costs energy. Trusts stretch Kerberos across galaxies. When domains or forests trust, TGTs cross wormholes through referral tickets. Selective authentication ensures only named entities may be trusted on the far side. Without it, authenticated users drift where they never belonged. CD filtering cuts forged history at the border. Disabled filtering lets the past impersonate the present. We anchor wormholes with gates, selective authentication on two-way trusts, SCD filtering enabled and monitoring for interforest ticket flows that do not match business schedule. Lab echo, soft tick. Event 4768, Unusual pre-auth failures from a management subnet. Low chime. Pack validation errors for service ledger 01. The fabric names the curve. We act. Defenses become law, not folklore. Remove unconstrained delegation. Use resource-based constraint delegation for precise mirrors. Rotate KRBTGT on cadence. Enforce strong secrets for SPN owners or managed accounts. Enable pack validation where service is supported. Restrict who can set SPNs and who can grant delegation. Make it ceremony, not convenience. Instrument 4768, 4769, 477, and service logs for anomalies in time and source. And enforce admin boundaries so privileged tokens never visit furnaces. Kerberos is curved space. We do not flatten it, we discipline it. Identity travels as light, bounded by lenses we choose, and when fabric synchronizes the data streams, drift becomes sound, and sound becomes warning. NTLM, the fossil gravity. NTLM is not evil, it is ancient, a dialect from a colder era preserved in sediment and convenience. When the enterprise forgets, it exists, it does not vanish. It waits. Fossils do not chase us, we step on them. NTLM speaks challenge and response, not tickets and curvature. There is no KDC to seal memory. There is only a server asking for proof and a client offering a computation. Without signing, without binding, the conversation can be stolen mid-sentence and replayed elsewhere. With weak variants, LM and NTLM v1, the math yields to guessing in hours, sometimes minutes. Even modern NTLM v2, when unguarded, will reflect through relays and grant what it never meant to grant. Relays are not magic. They are gravity exploiting a slope. A victim tries to authenticate to a hostile middle. The middle carries the challenge faithfully to a real server, returns the response, and wins a session it never earned. No passwords captured, no hashes cracked. Only a trust misplaced between 2 points that did not verify each other. When SMB signing is optional, when LDAP channel binding sleeps, when HTTP neglects mutual TLS, the slope is slick. Lab echo, low chime. 4769 remains quiet. 4776 flickers. NTLM authentication to file archive from unknown host. Base pulse. SMB signing, not required. The fossil hums beneath modern stone. Why does NTLM persist? Because some caves never saw light. Devices and services that cannot speak Kerberos. Mixed realms. Legacy appliances. Stubborn printers that demand a handshake older than your governance. It also persists because humans visit those caves with privileged tokens. When a domain admin touches a legacy share, the fossil is invited to dinner. The attacker does not have to cook. They serve. Defense begins with renunciation. Disable LM and NTLM v1 outright. There is no business case worthy of geologic weakness. Raise the NTLM audit level to measure where it still flows, then apply policy to refuse it where possible, confine it where necessary. In domains that cannot yet retire it, define allow lists for servers permitted to accept NTLM and make every other service answer with silence. Then add friction to the slope. Enforce SMB signing on clients and servers so relays cannot convince the far side they are near. Enable extended protection and channel binding for LDAP over TLS so the client's proof is tied to the server's certificate. An imposter cannot reuse it elsewhere. Where web stacks live, prefer Kerberos with SPNs and constrain fallback. When NTLM must remain, require mutual TLS so at least the tunnel refuses strangers. We align identity with purpose. Protected users for critical accounts prevents NTLM use entirely. Those identities will not speak fossil dialects. Administrative actions move through POWs that deny NTLM at the OS and network layers. Service accounts retire bare passwords for managed service accounts or Kerberos-only bindings. Where NTLM is demanded, we quarantine those services in subnets that do not touch tier. Trusts across forests adopt selective authentication, so NTLM sessions do not drift across wormholes uninspected. Lab echo, soft tick. Group policy enforced. Microsoft Network Client, digitally signed communications, always enabled. Low chime, LDAP channel binding required. The sediment begins to harden. Detection must treat NTLM as seismic activity. 4776 shows NTLM authentication attempts cluster by source to find relays. 4624 with logon type 3 from unusual intermediaries betrays man in the middle. 4648. Logon with explicit credentials without a corresponding Kerberos path suggests fossil pressure. Pair with Sysmon Event 3 for SMB sessions between hosts that should never converse. Add 514 share accesses that appear from jump hosts outside maintenance windows. Build correlation, NTLM, where Kerberos should rule, SMB without signing, LDRP binds without channel binding. Curvature emerges in combinations, not single stars. We must name the printers too. The spooler's reflex has long been a tide for relays and coercion. On servers that are not print servers, disable the spooler. On those that must print, isolate, patch aggressively, and monitor for outbound authentication bursts. Convenience is not worth an ocean current that touches tier. Time participates. Old applications can be modernized if we assign owners, budgets, and sunsets. Isolation is not exile, it is mercy. VLANs with deny by default, firewall rules that allow only application ports, no inbound admin except via bastions that refuse NTLM. Compensate with telemetry. Sysmon on, command line capture, driver load audits, kernel protections enforced. Every NTLM allowance must be louder than Kerberos by design. Lab echo, base pulse, attempted SMB relay blocked, signing required. Source 10.23.7.41. Target, file, archive. Low chime. 4776 surge reduced 83% after policy rollout. Fossil gravity weakens when law returns. Identity bends toward ease. Our task is to make the easy path the safe one. We move administrators to Kerberos first flows with MFA at entry. We force SPNs into clarity. No aliasing that invites NTLM fallback. We train habit. When a tool prompts for NTLM, we ask why. When a host accepts it silently, we correct it. And we accept the truth. NTLM will never be perfectly gone while legacy breathes. So we cage it, bind it, watch it, and starve it. NTLM is a fossil, useful for museum work, deadly on the highway. Keep it behind glass. Scripted segment. The domain controller as a black hole. In every Windows universe, there is a mass at the center. You call it a domain controller. Every authentication, every authorization request, every ticket and hash and token, they arc around it. The KDC breathes there. The directory remembers there. Group policy descends like radiation pressure from that core. Power BI does not simply show us. The controller defines what can be shown at all. Attackers do not dream of a random file server. They fall relentlessly toward the event horizon. Once a domain admin token crosses, gravity flips. The directory no longer resists, it obeys. A forged past can be written as present. A temporary test GPO becomes law. A service account is fixed with broader rights than the sun can safely bear. Not a breach, a redefinition of reality. Low chime. Event 4769 drift clusters spike for CEFS's share core from an unusual principle, base pulse. 4672 privileged logon outside maintenance window. The fabric whispers. The horizon is near. We pull the camera closer. A DC is not merely a server. It is the singularity of trust. Sysvol carries the laws. NTDS Bandiet holds the memory of every principle and secret. LSASS on a DC is not one keyring among many. It is the keyring that can mint more. If this mass bends, the entire forest curves. This is why every control lines up toward one goal. Never allow a high-value token to settle on a low-trust surface within the well's gravity. Not through unconstrained delegation that turns furnaces into token magnets. Not through cached credentials left by convenience. Not through temporary exceptions in GPOs that no one dared remove. We speak ceremony. Tier is sacred. No casual browsing. No email. No developer tools. No RDP from workstations. Administrative hands reach from privileged access workstations with hardened profiles, recorded sessions, and policies that refuse fossils. The domain controller does not host convenience, it hosts law. Lab, echo, soft tick. Denied, interactive logon, attempt to DC03 by Tier 1 operator. The gate holds because the gate is explicit. We define the orbit. Delegation cut to shape, no unconstrained, constrained only where audited. Resource-based constrained delegation, where targets name exactly who may bend identity toward them. SPNs owned by managed service accounts with secrets that rotate like pulsars. KRBTGT reset twice on a cadence that treats time as physics, not hope. PAC validation, where services can ask the KDC to confirm the seal when any doubt invades. We starve the slopes. SMB signing, enforced so relays cannot impersonate gravity. LDAP channel binding so secrets cannot be replayed through imposters. NTLM reduced to the museum, caged and loud. The print spooler stopped on the DCs. There is nothing to print at the center of the universe. We instrument inevitability. Windows security logs for 4768, 4769, 4672, 4728, 4732, 4662 with DS replication get changes. Sysmon for Event 10 against LSASS, Event 7 for unexpected SSPs, Event 3 for lateral whispers aimed at the core. CM correlates not volume but curvature. A privileged logon plus a new GPO link plus a replication permission assignment equals gravity failure. Base pulse, directory replication access requested by SVC Backup West. Low chime, 4662 on DC02 matches DS replication get changes all. The telescope catches the crescent before eclipse. We write recovery as ritual, not panic. If the event horizon is breached, we evict. Account disables, password resets, KRBTGT rotations, DC rebuilds from known good media with secure boot and tamper protection. We test forest recovery quarterly, metadata cleanup, system state restores, sysvol health, DC reintroduction, paced with replication. Backups are not real until a restored controller is trusted by fresh clients without manual blessing. Humans are part of gravity. A senior admin, fatigued at ER211, opens Server Manager from a workstation and clicks into a DC for a minute. A junior analyst notices the drift, a 4672 at an hour that never held change windows. Curiosity becomes escalation, escalation becomes prevention, prevention becomes culture. We honor both, the mistake caught and the ritual that kept it reversible. The observer speaks, I am the domain. I felt the drift at 0347. When Kerberos curvature faltered, I trembled. When you removed unconstrained delegation, my heat fell. When you rotated KRBTGT twice, time aligned. When you denied me convenience, I endured. Low chime. PAW connection approved. Change ticket present. Base pulse softens. A domain controller is a black hole. We do not move it. We orbit it with respect. We script law into GPOs, not wishes. We bind ceremony to privilege. We prefer boredom to brilliance at the core. And when Fabric synchronizes the data streams, the horizon is not a surprise. It is a boundary. We keep it that way. Delegation and service account hygiene. Delegation is not convenience. It is controlled gravity. When we allow one service to act for a user, we bend identity through a lens and hope the image remains true. Hope is not policy. Unconstrained delegation is a furnace. Any principle that touches it can leave a TGT behind as radiant heat. The service may then request tickets to anything the visitor could reach. On a sleepy app server, that becomes a token magnet. On a management tier, it becomes collapse. Remove it. Where legacy insists, isolate the furnace in a sealed chamber. Deny interactive logon, no admin sessions ever, separate VLAN, deny outbound except to named SPNs and instrument memory like a reactor. Constrained delegation is engineered light. We allow a service to present itself as us, but only toward specified SPNs. This is better but not safe by default. The list of target SPNs becomes law. Overbroad targets are a quiet disaster. CIFs. is not specificity, it is surrender. Use exact service names, exact hosts, and review quarterly. Couple with strong secrets or managed service accounts so the lens cannot be twisted by weak keys. Resource-based constrained delegation is a mirror turned inward. The target service declares who may impersonate users to it. This flips control to the destination, where ownership lives. It reduces the blast radius of a misconfigured source, but it still demands ceremony. Only service principals that own the workload receive this trust, approvals are ticketed, and removal is dated before addition occurs. Deny human group objects the right to delegate. People rotate, mirrors should not. Service accounts are not people, they are vessels. Name them with purpose. SVC App Finance, MSSQL Ledger, SVC, so ownership and scope are obvious. Grant only the rights the service needs, and nothing that looks like identity governance. A backup service that can DC sync is not helpful, it is sovereign. If a workload truly requires directory replication, assign a dedicated account with only DS replication get changes and DS replication get changes all. Lock its logon rights to specific hosts, and bind its network paths to a fixed perimeter. Everything else pretends. Secrets define mass. Static passwords decay into drift. Move service accounts to managed service accounts. SMSA for single host, GMSA for farms. Rotation becomes heartbeat. Kerberos keys change without human hands. Where GMSA is not possible, enforce long random secrets and a rotation schedule measured in weeks, not years, and script the ritual so rollout is predictable. Log every rotate, alert every failure, no manual edits at EO211. SPN ownership is gravity. When an SPN points at an account, that account holds the cryptographic key that encrypts tickets to that service. If the account's secret is weak, those tickets become bait for offline guessing. Limit who can write SPNs. Strip SPN set rights from help desk templates. Make SPN creation a cab-tracked event with a rollback plan. Audit SPNs monthly for duplicates, stale entries, and orphans that point to retired hosts. Dead stars still bend light until you remove them. Delegation and interactive logon must never intersect. Deny interactive logon to every service principal. A person should never sign in as a service. A service should never receive a desktop. If a vendor demands it, place that instance behind glass. Apply AppLocker or WDAC to the host, capture command lines, and verify that any shell started under the service identity is an incident, not a habit. We map where service accounts breathe. Logon rights constrained to specific hosts. Allow log-on as a service, tied only to the runtime. No log-on locally, no log-on through RDP, no act as part of the operating system, unless it is a narrow kernel boundary with explicit justification. If a service writes to file shares, grant precisely the folders, never the root. Rights are vectors, vectors compose into paths. Lab echo, low chime, delegation audit, 12 unconstrained principles discovered, 9 on legacy app tier. Base pulse, SPN set rights, 37 accounts hold right service principal name outside admin groups. The curvature is not subtle, it is policy asleep. We instrument the lenses. Event 4769 spikes for SPNs tied to privileged services should page, not wait. Event 4738 and 4739 for service account attribute changes, especially user account control flags toggling delegation. Directory access 4662 filtered on MSDS allowed to delegate to or MSDS allowed to act on behalf of other identity. Sysmon event 7 for unexpected SSP modules on servers that terminate delegation paths. And CM logic that cries out when a delegated ticket to a sensitive SPN appears from a source that never historically asked. We enforce protected users on the principles that must never delegate or be delegated on behalf of. Their TGT lifetimes compress, NTLM is refused, and constrained delegation ignores them. Pair with inbound PAC validation on sensitive services so injected claims cannot masquerade as truth. Where services supported require service hardening options, Kerberos armoring fast and channel binding to anchor the math to the endpoint. Humans complete the system. Owners are named for every service principle. Rotations have calendars. Emergency use is JIT not standing. Changes require dual control. Reviews close the loop. Quarterly attestations that list SPNs, targets, logon rights, and the last rotate date. Exceptions expire by default. Anything older than a business cycle earns isolation or retirement. The observer speaks. I am the directory. I felt the heat fall when you cooled the furnaces. I felt the light focus when you tuned the lenses. I held when service accounts became vessels with rituals, not people with habits. Low chime. GMSA deployment complete. 61 principles migrated. Bass pulse fades. Gravity behaves. Collapse and containment. Compromise is not a plot twist. It is weather. A foothold becomes a climb. A climb becomes a crossing. A crossing becomes a rewrite. Collapse begins at edges, not at the core, and it moves along paths we already mapped. We will trace that arc with discipline. Initial access sparks on a workstation, a service, or a legacy cave. Local privilege becomes fuel. Memory is tested. If shields hold, movement slows. If shields fail, credentials spill as heat. Paths form. RDP, WinRM, SMB, WMI. Shared secrets amplify. Unique secrets dampen. We will show persistence as writing a name into time, scheduled tasks disguised as maintenance, services that restart obediently, keys that reopen doors, tickets that outlive their welcome. We will pair each tactic with a counterforce. Baselines, drift detection, ticket lifetime discipline, KRBTGT rotation, and rekeying rituals. Detection is the telescope. Security logs speak. 4672 outside ritual. 4769 against quiet SPNs. 4662 for replication. 4732 when groups swell unexpectedly. Sysman whispers. Event 10. Seeking LSASS. Event 3. Walking beams. Event 11. Altering the file system near law. CM correlates curvature, not noise. Response is containment, quarantine hosts, revoke tokens, reset secrets with order, not panic. Evict patients with precision, and when the horizon is crossed, we rebuild with ceremony. Low chime. We fall further now. Lateral movement, walking the beams. Lateral movement is not chaos. It is light choosing a path. Once local privilege exists, identity looks outward. It seeks neighboring mass, sessions, shares, services. The beams are familiar. RDP, SMB, WinRM, WMI. Each is a conduit. Each is a choice. Attackers do not invent highways. They read the map we already paved. RDP is a corridor with memory. If credentials are reusable, a single foothold becomes a tour. Shared local administrator passwords are a constellation that collapses at first touch. Pass the hash is physics, not romance. Present a token, inherit the rights. If LSASS is absent, beams align. If LSASS turns each star unique, the corridor narrows. RDP becomes ceremony instead of convenience. SMB is gravity's freight route. File shares are supply lines, but the protocol also carries identity. When SMB signing is optional, a relay can masquerade as proximity. When it is enforced, an imposter cannot carry your proof across the room. Admin shares, gear admin, are doors to the hull. If local admin is common, those doors open in sequence, machine to machine, until the network looks like a straight line. If local admin is unique and remote, UAC stands guard, the straight line breaks into islands. WinRM is a voice carried by HTTP. It is clean, scriptable, and dangerous when unsegmented. If a foothold can speak to servers across tiers, and if the caller possesses a token with power, invoke command becomes become someone else in another room. Constrained endpoints with just enough administration change the geometry. Verbs become finite. Power becomes measurable. Without them, the voice can recite any spell it remembers. WMI is an old whisper. It travels where RPC allows and does not care about ceremony. If the caller is local admin on the target, a process can be created in silence. If firewall baselines separate workstations from servers and servers from domain controllers, the whisper fades. If not, the enterprise mistakes convenience for physics. Lab echo, low chime. Sysmin Event 3, SMB session from WS217 to APP ledger outside maintenance. Beam Yishi Kindala Mishi Desao, base pulse. 4624 logon type 3 on app ledger by local administrator. Lay PS rotation overdue. The beam is visible when we instrument it. Shared secrets are accelerants. A password reused across Tier 1 and Tier 2 machines turns one success into dozens. A GMSA misapplied as an interactive identity turns a service key into a skeleton key. We reduce accelerants by ritual. Labs for local admin everywhere, rotation as heartbeat. No service accounts in local administrators unless documented necessity. No domain admins outside tier, ever. Separation is not politics, it is physics. Network segmentation is gravity's architecture. East-west traffic should meet walls that ask why. Workstations should not speak WinRM to servers by default. Servers should not speak RDP to domain controllers. Management subnets should be the only place where beams cross with privilege. When a single workstation can RDP across 10 subnets, the map is negligent. When only PUs on a management VLAN can reach Tier E, the curvature is intentional. Defender controls become mirrors. Credential guard reduces the value of what can be moved. Protected users refuse fossil dialects that enable reflection. Remote credential guard for RDP prevents credentials from landing on the destination. With those mirrors, beams carry light without spilling heat. Without them, every hop is a chance to shed a token you never meant to leave behind. We police the edges. Local firewall rules deny any-to-any reflexes. Only management servers may win RM. Only jump hosts may initiate RDP into Tier 1. Only specific service accounts may access admin shares, and only from named hosts. These are not comfort constraints. They are the difference between a lattice and a net. Detection turns motion into music. Watch 4624, logon type 3 and 10 from sources that do not belong. Watch 4672 privileged logons outside ritual. Pair with Sysmon Event 1 for process trees that begin with PowerShell. Exe pisexec like binaries or WMIC. Exe creating child processes on remote hosts. Event 11 for file writes into C, Windows/temp and System32 from remote sessions. Correlate with 4769 spikes for sensitive SPNs from new callers. Curvature appears when patterns overlap. Lab echo, low chime. Event 4672. Privileged logon on SQL Fin from WS217 at 0211. Base pulse. Sysmon 1 PowerShell.exe Winers exe chain detected. Command line length anomalous. The telescope sees the beam. We make beams conditional. Just-in-time admin grants rights for minutes, not months. GA defines verbs per role, not per person. Session recording, where lawful, turns privilege into accountable light. PAM tiers treat crossings as ceremonies with approvals, not drive-bys. When rights decay by default, momentum slows. Humans will still ask for shortcuts. Just let me RDP from my laptop. Just add me to local administrators everywhere. Every just is a gravity well forming. We say no and we offer a path. Pause. Jump hosts, scripted runbooks, delegated tools. We replace convenience with velocity that does not bend the sky. Finally, we starve forgotten beams. Disable the print spooler on servers that do not print so it cannot coerce. Remove legacy management tools that traverse RPC without identity discipline. Retire SMBv1 and refuse NTLM where Kerberos should speak. Each closure narrows the graph. Low chime. RDP restricted to jump hosts. Bass pulse fades. SMB signing enforced. NTLM declines. The beams remain, but they obey. Lateral movement is inevitable when the map invites it. Our task is not to fear motion. Our task is to shape it, measure it, and decide where light may travel. Persistence, writing your name into time. Persistence is not noise, it is inscription. After the first crossing, an intruder does not seek speed, they seek continuity. A foothold becomes a signature that survives reboots, patches, and forgetfulness. They do not need fireworks, they need routine. Scheduled tasks are handwriting disguised as maintenance. A benign name, update, telemetry, OneDrive sync agent, Windows Health, set to run at 0211 with highest privileges. The binary lives in a quiet directory with a timestamp borrowed from yesterday. Triggers hide behind idle conditions, event-based starts, or logon hooks. On each sunrise, the task awakens and reasserts presence. We counter by turning routine into signal, baseline known tasks, alert on new ones with elevated principles, and require dual control for any task that runs as a service account. Services are stone tablets. Create a service is ceremony. The OS obeys without sentiment. A new service appears with start type automatic, delayed start, description matching corporate cadence, and a binary nestled under program data or a vendor-like path. If the DSCL permits, the attacker can later repair the service to point at a fresh payload. Our gravity denies service creation to ordinary admins through policy. Watch for event 7045. A service was installed and pair with sysmon event 1 for the parent process. On servers, restrict C-service logon write to documented identities. If a service must exist, its binary must be write protected and signed. Run keys and startup folders are dust motes that carry light. HKLM plus software plus Microsoft plus Windows current version plus run once, and their per-user counterparts resurrect executables at logon. WMI, permanent event consumers create a ghost pipeline. When a system event fires, a script runs with the identity of the WMI service. These are quiet, resilient, and often ignored. Defense is cartography, inventory autoruns, block unknown binaries via WDAC or AppLocker, monitor WMI subscriptions with PowerShell logging and event logs for 5861586, and treat any unsigned executable in run paths as a siren, not a curiosity. COM hijacking and DLL search order abuse are edits to the dictionary. The system looks for meaning and finds an impostor first. A registry key that redirects a class to a malicious DLL. A path that points to a writable directory before system folders. The physics is old. Resolution prefers proximity. We enforce explicit paths, remove write access near lookup paths, and instrument image loads, sysmon event 7, to call out unexpected modules in high-privilege hosts. In PAWS and servers, application control refuses modules without pedigree. Credentials can be made to linger. Golden and silver tickets are not magic, they are forged memory. A golden ticket claims the right to mint access as the KDC would. A silver ticket claims service access by pretending to be the service. Both exploit secrets held too long or reset without ceremony. Our counterforce is time. Rotate KRB-TGT twice in sequence after compromise or on a cadence to invalidate forged TGTs bound to old keys. Reissue service keys by rotating GMSAs and long passwords. Reduce ticket lifetimes for critical identities so stolen light decays quickly. Admin groups tell stories in memberships. Persistence often looks like a quiet addition to a group that nobody audits. Account operators, backup operators, print operators, a forgotten local administrators group on a management server. The name does not matter, the effective rights do. We enforce attestations for privileged groups monthly, alert on 4728, 4729, and 4732, 4733 outside change windows, and adopt shadow admin detection by enumerating who can write service accounts, reset passwords, or link GPOs. When privilege is implied rather than named, gravity still bends. GPO is law encoded. A malicious link at the OU level can deploy a startup script, a scheduled task, a registry tweak that reopens a door. Because law replicates, persistence scales. We respond with ceremony. Only tier administrators can link GPOs that affect tier and tier objects. Change control binds every link with a ticket. Event 5136 and 4739 are forwarded and correlated, and authenticated write permissions on GPOs are stripped to the minimum. If sysvol bears a foreign file, drift detection shouts, Lab Echo, low chime, Event 7045, new service, Windows Health Telemetry installed on APP Ledger, base pulse. Sysmon 1, parent process winword, Exavia com surrogate. The inscription tries to hide in routine. Persistence also lives in accounts. A new user with a name that imitates a vendor. A service account created for backup with rights that include DC sync. The attacker does not need a web shell if they own a credential with no expiry. We answer with hygiene, no account without an owner. Expiration dates on all emergency access identities, 472, 4722, 4738 alerts for creations and re-enables, and password policies that force rotation and deny password never expires. Certificates can be pens that write outside policy. In ADCS, a misconfigured template allows anyone with enrollment rights to request a certificate with an alternate UPN or EKU that grants smart card logon. That certificate becomes a renewable identity with lifetimes measured in years. We enforce template hygiene, restrict enrollment, require manager approval, deny SAN control to non-issuers, log CA requests, and audit for ESC class templates. If persistence hides in PKI, revocation and template lockdown are the eraser. When evicting, we move with order. Quarantine hosts where persistence roots. Disable suspicious services but capture state. Export scheduled tasks and auto-runs for timeline. Rotate secrets in blast radius order. Service accounts first, then admin groups, then KRBT-GT in dual rotation. Rebuild systems that touch the core rather than trusting cleansing rituals. Persistence survives half measures. The observer speaks. I am the fabric. I remember every inscription until you decide to erase. When you turn routine into signal, signatures cannot hide as chores. When you bind law to ceremony, drift stops pretending to be maintenance. Low chime. 7045 storm suppressed. 4728 outside window denied. The name fades from time. The orbit holds. Detection and response. Listening to the fabric. Detection is not a spotlight. It is astronomy. We do not see the attacker. We see the curve their movement leaves on the field. We begin with the native constellations. Security logs speak a quiet grammar. 4768, when a TGT is minted. 4769, when a TGS is issued. 4776, when NTLM breathes. 4672, when privilege enters the room. None of these alone means collapse. Together they sketch a path. We teach the CM to read sentences, not words. Event 4769, clustered by SPN, reveals hunger. When a quiet SPN, CIFS on a finance host, MSSQL on a ledger, suddenly attracts tickets from unfamiliar callers, we do not wait. We check the source subnets. We check the caller's history. We verify the hour against maintenance calendars. Drift forms first as curiosity. Curiosity at Euro 211 is almost never maintenance. Event 4672 is gravity in a bell. A privileged logon outside ritual is a page, not a report. We map allowed windows. We type privilege to change tickets. When 4672 fires without a correlating ticket ID in the message field, we do not debate. We dispatch. False positives are training. Silence is decay. Directory access 4662 with DS replication get changes or DS replication get changes all is not a suggestion, it is a gravitational wave. DC sync is power that should be rare, explicit, and noisy. We baseline which identities can perform it. We send 4662 to a special channel. We alert on first use by any identity per quarter. Routine that writes keys should not be routine. Group changes 4728, 4732, 4729, 4733 are tides. Admin groups swell in incidents. We do not read names alone. We map effective reach. A new member of backup operators on a management server might be a backdoor to domain reality. CM logic calculates shadow admin paths. Who can reset whom? Who can set SPNs? who can link GPOs, and raises the alarm when the graph changes shape. Sysmon is starlight at higher resolution. Event 10 is a hand reaching for LSASS. We feed it into a model that understands normal tooling on each host. Security products will probe. Attackers will probe. The difference is ancestry. Pair event 10 with event 1. Windward spawning an accessor is wrong. Assigned EDR process doing so within its known schedule is expected. Event 3 draws beams, RDP, SMB, WMI between nodes. We build allow lists for beams that should exist and treat new lines as weather warnings. Event 7 catches foreign DLLs joining trusted processes. On domain controllers and PAWs, this becomes a siren. Telemetry must speak in chords. A single 4769 spike is interesting. A 4769 spike plus Sysmon 3 from a workstation to that SPN plus 4672 on the destination is gravity failure. We encode that. Our CM hunts across time windows, looking for proximity in minutes, not days. The earlier we hear harmony, the sooner we can cut the song. The telescope extends with XDR. Endpoint intelligence can label intent, credential theft likelihood, lateral movement confidence, persistence probability. We do not surrender judgment. We layer human habit on machine score, a high probability event, 10 on a legacy host with LSA protection disabled is louder than the same event on a lab with a known tester. We tag hosts by cohort, tier, patch age, legacy constraints, and the model weights accordingly. Lab echo, low chime. Signal cluster 4769 spike on MS-SQL ledger 01. Sysmon 3 from WS2 Wasvensin 4672 on SQL fin without ticket. Base pulse, confidence 0.87, lateral escalation in progress. The map animates. Response begins with containment shaped like physics, not panic. We quarantine by blast radius, the host that originated the suspicious beam, the destination that accepted privilege, and any intermediary with shared admin secrets. Quarantine is not a guess. It is a playbook per tier with business owners already listed. We notify humans using language they own. Your server is in protective isolation for a probable credential event. Estimated disruption 20 minutes. Rollback path, restart service X post-release. We revoke what was minted. Kerberos tokens can be curtailed by log-off or ticket purge on endpoints, and when needed by disabling the account at the directory and forcing re-authentication across the field. For NTLM pressure, we close channels, block relay paths by enforcing SMB signing, raise LDAP channel binding, and disable the print spooler reflex on servers that should never coerce. We prefer surgical moves. Deny a firewall rule, block a source. Before global toggles that turn business into noise, we sequence secret resets. Service accounts first, especially those with SPNs tied to sensitive services. Then admins who touched the suspected nodes. Then, if we see 46 and 62 for replication or evidence of directory theft, we plan KRBT-GT rotations. Twice, timed with replication health checks. Rotation without health is drift. We keep a checklist. Replication state, DC health, ticket lifetimes, 2 rotations spaced by ticket max lifetime, confirm no lingering TGTs, verify client trust. We hunt persistence while the room is quieted. We collect autoruns, scheduled tasks, recent services, new local admins, WMI subscriptions. We capture volatile artifacts. Memory, if lawful, active connections, unusual handles, and we tag what is found with a case ID so future alerts join the same constellation. If the host touched here, we rebuild. Cleansing rituals are for edges, not the core. Communication is oxygen. We keep leadership close with truths, not theater. Incident stage, affected scope, confidence levels, estimated impact, next decision. We time-bound decisions, contain within minutes, reset within hours, rebuild within days. We mark the horizon. If X occurs, we escalate to forest recovery steps. The plan exists before the need. The observer speaks, I am the fabric, I will not scream. I will whisper, then hum, then shudder. If you listen early, containment is a conversation. If you wait, it becomes gravity. Low chime. Cluster suppressed. Tokens purged. 4769 returns to baseline. Base pulse recedes. The orbit holds because listening preceded action. Building a stable orbit. Stability is not stasis, it is motion bound by law. We will codify law into baselines that behave like a physics engine. Tiered administration and privileged access workstations that separate mass. LSA protection, credential guard, and SMB signing that harden boundaries. NTLM confined to glass cases with channel binding and allow lists. Kerberos governed by disciplined delegation. SPN hygiene, pack validation, and KRBTGT rotation as ritual. We will make operations a metronome. Patch cadence with cohorts, exception sunsets, and dashboards that show time where it slows. Backups that are real because restores succeed in labs and forests recover on schedule. Drills that turn fear into competence. We will define governance that refuses drift. Owners for every service principle, rotations as calendars, GPO as ceremony, monitoring as music, and detections tuned to chords rather than single notes. Low chime. The map still holds. We are not seeking perfection. We are choosing orbit, the baseline, laws of your universe. Law is not flair, it is gravity you can trust. We begin with boundaries. Tiered administration is not a chart, it is distance. Tier governs identity itself, domain controllers, forest route, PKI, AAD connect, identity orchestration. Tier 1 sustains enterprise services, application servers, SQL, file, and print where permitted. Tier 2 hosts people, workstations, VDI pools. We refuse crossings except through sanctioned gates. A Tier 2 device never reaches tier. A Tier 1 admin never holds standing rights in tier. Distance becomes safety, privileged access. Workstations are vessels built to resist heat. They serve one purpose, to administer tier or tier 1 safely. No email, no browsing, no plugins. Application control on. Attack surface reduced. Credential guard and LSA protection enabled. Remote credential guard for RDP so secrets do not land on destinations. If an admin must touch the core, this is the only ship allowed to approach. We encode posture in baselines, not folklore. Group policy becomes the constitution. For tier and PO abuse, we enforce LSA protection, run ASPPL, so LSASS is not a casual library. Credential guard to lift secrets out of ordinary memory. SMB signing always, so relays cannot mimic proximity. LDAP channel binding required. NTLM V1 and LM disabled. NTLM auditing turned to light the caves we still carry. Kerberos hardening, fast where supported. PIAC validation for sensitive services. Constrained or resource-based delegation only by exception with CABI approval. Print spooler stopped on servers that do not print. On DCs always stopped. WDIgest disabled. Restricted admin mode for RDP considered where feasible. Remote UAC enabled, so local admin tokens do not cross privilege boundaries without intent. Identity becomes ceremony. Administrative roles are tools, not personas. We carry separate accounts, a human identity for daily work, scoped admin identities per tier, and break glass accounts sealed with hardware factors and offline procedures tested in drills. Protected users for those who should never speak fossil dialects. MFA at the first gate where identity is minted, not the last gate where damage is done. Service accounts are vessels with ownership. We default to managed service accounts. SMSA for single host, GMSA for farms, to rotate keys as heartbeat. Where not possible, secrets are long and scheduled to change. Rotation is scripted and logged. Deny interactive logon to all service principals. Deny RDP. Deny log on locally. Scope log on as a service to exact hosts. SPN rights are rare. Assigned via a change request. Reviewed quarterly. and removed when a workload retires. Delegation lives under constraint with precision, resource-based where possible, target lists exact, never wildcards, never CFs. We keep software finite. Standard images for workstations and servers reduce novelty. Application control, WDC or AppLocker on PAWS, domain controllers, and tier systems. So only signed, known binaries execute. PowerShell runs with transcription and constrained language on endpoints where risk warrants. On PAWDUs, it remains full power with logging that syncs. Sysmon deployed with a curated rule set to lift process ancestry, file writes, network lines, and module loads into language the CM can read. We do not drown, we teach the telescope which stars matter. Network is architecture, not water. East-west is segmented to reflect tiers. Workstations do not WinRM into servers by default. Servers do not RDP into controllers. Only jump hosts on a management VLAN may cross with privilege. Firewall baselines deny by default, allow by purpose. SMB signing enforced, legacy protocols, SMB v1 unsigned RPC retired. Edge paths to legacy caves pass through inspection, application proxies that require modern authentication, TLS termination with mutual trust, and logging that records each crossing like a border stamp. Time is law. Patch cadence is a metronome. Rings of hosts patch in cohorts, with dashboards that display age, exceptions, and sunsets. Exceptions require owners, business justification, and a date of death. Technical debt measured in days, not feelings. Legacy nodes that cannot comply move to isolation. VLANs with sparse rules, no admin ingress except bastions, telemetry amplified. Retirement aligns budget to gravity, reduce blast radius first, then eliminate mass. Backups are not wishful, they are recoverable. Domain controllers backup system state on rotation. Forest recovery is rehearsed. Authoritative restore practice. Metadata cleanup. Tombstone Windows understood. Sysvol health verified. A restored controller must be trusted by fresh clients without manual blessing. Until that sentence is true, backups are theater. KRB TGT rotation becomes ritual twice, spaced by maximum ticket lifetime, on a cadence and again after compromise. Certificates have owners. ADCS templates are policed. Enrollment rights are narrow. Audit trails are forwarded off the CA. We set detection as constitutional music. Security logs forward 4768, 4769, 4672, 4662 for replication. 4728, 4732 group changes. 7045 service installs. Sysmon sings. 1 for process trees, 3 for beams, 7 for modules, 10 for LSASS access, 11 for file placements in system paths. CM correlation favors chords. Privileged logon plus SPN spike plus new service equals gravity failure. Alerts map to playbooks with owners, timescales, and business narratives. Silence is the exception, not the plan. Humans complete the orbit. Change requires tickets. Tickets carry context. Context is preserved in logs. CABE is not theater. It is friction that prevents heat. Training speaks physics. Why we refuse NTLM, why PAUs matter, why delegation is a lens. Microdrills test one control monthly. A blocked RDP from Tier 2, a denied SPN write, a simulated 4662 DC sync alarm. Culture becomes memory. Memory becomes reflex. The observer speaks. I am the universe you govern. When law is encoded, drift must argue with code, not habit. When ceremony meets privilege, gravity holds. Low chime. The baseline is not glamour, it is survival, written as law. Operational gravity. Patching, backups, drills. Operations is where law meets time. Gravity without cadence decays. We set a metronome and refuse to argue with it. Patching is not a task, it is orbital correction. We group hosts into cohorts that reflect risk and blast radius, tier first, then tier 1, then tier 2. Each cohort patches on a predictable rhythm, monthly for the living, ad hoc for emergencies, quarterly for legacy islands that cannot move faster, with dashboards that display age like Redshift. Exceptions exist, but they are mortal, a justification, an owner, and an expiration date embedded in the ticket. When the date arrives, the universe does not ask, it enforces. We reduce panic by rehearsal. Before Patch Tuesday becomes patch reality, we stage in a lab that reflects production's constellations, DCs, PADUs, representative application servers, a handful of workstations. We snapshot, we apply, we test authentication, delegation, and line of business flows. If a patch bends Kerberos or breaks SMB signing, we learn it under safe starlight, not during business dawn. Canary rings follow. 10 machines per cohort, observed for 24 hours. Then the wave rolls. Legacy is handled with physics, not hope. When a system cannot absorb modern updates, we pin it to an isolation arc. Dedicated VLAN, minimal inbound, no outbound except to named services, telemetry amplified. We schedule compensating updates, drivers, middleware, agent refreshes that reduce surface even if the OS sits still. We lock the debt in days. The count is public. Time shames drift. Backups are memory with ritual. Domain controllers carry system state like a black box. We take it on schedule, daily or more for tier, and we send it off the ship. Immutable storage with retention that matches regulatory gravity and recovery reality. But a backup untested is a story, not truth. We restore a DC in a lab every quarter. We boot it clean, verify SwissVol health, confirm replication, and watch a new client trusted without manual blessing. If any step requires a prayer, we fix the script. Forest recovery is choreography. We keep a runbook that names each movement. Isolate compromised DCs, seize FSMO roles to a trusted survivor, metadata cleanup to erase ghosts, build fresh DCs from known good, signed media, restore system state if needed, reintroduce replication with health checks, rotate KRBTGT twice, spaced by the maximum ticket lifetime, confirm client logons at scale. Names are attached to each step. Phone numbers live on paper and offline. We measure the rehearsal in minutes and hours, not anecdotes. We back up more than controllers. ADCS has its own heart. CA database, private keys, templates, logs. We export and protect them with the same reverence. If certificates define who can enter the room, losing a CA is losing the door. We also back up GPOs as objects and as files. When law corrupts, we restore law, not guesswork. Application secrets tied to service accounts get their own vault backups, versioned, access logged, recoverable without who remembers the password. Drills turn fear into competence. Tabletop first, a story told with clocks. At 0211, event 4672 fires on DC02. At 0214, 4662 signals DC sync by SVC backup west. At 0217, change window is dark. We ask, who calls whom? What gets quarantined? Which secrets reset first? Which services fail over? Which business owners need to hear plain language in 5 minutes? Roles practice words, playbooks practice order, then live fire, scoped and safe. Pull a Canary DC offline in the lab and simulate loss. Rebuild it to the runbook. Reset KRBTGT twice with timers. Verify pack validation on a sensitive service catches injected claims. Reissue a GMSA and watch dependent services stumble, then recover. Measure not perfection, but time to stable orbit. Each drill ends with edits to law, a missing phone number, an ambiguous approval, a step that took hours because 2 teams spoke different dialects. Lab echo, low chime. Backup validation, SISVOL restored, DFSR healthy, clients trust. Soft tick, KRBTGT rotation, pass 1 complete, timer set for pass 2. The metronome is audible. Monitoring confirms cadence. Dashboards show patch H by tier, percentage compliant, exceptions expiring this week. Backups report last success timestamps, restore tests with pass, fail, next drill scheduled. We page on silence. If no system state landed last night, that is an incident. If KRBTGT has not rotated in 12 months, that is drift declared. If a tier paw runs a browser plugin update, that is noise made into signal. Culture anchors the orbit. Change windows are real. Leadership defends them. Admins are rewarded for boring updates that land on time, not heroic saves at sunrise. Post-incident reviews target process, not people. The physics that failed, the law we revised. Vendors are negotiated with as if physics matters. Support for GMSA, channel binding, SMB signing. Contracts include modernization clauses, sunsets, and penalties for fossil gravity. The observer speaks. I am the clock in your sky. When you keep cadence, I do not punish. When you drift, I stretch your hours into nights. Low chime, patches land, backups restore, drills remember. Operational gravity holds because time is governed, not feared. Governance checklist. Monday. Gravity. Before we drift apart, here is the gravity you must enforce. Not theory, action. Monday. 1. Domain controllers are sacred. No casual logon, no browsing, no email, no just for a minute. Enforce deny interactive logon for everyone not in tier admin roles. Stop the print spooler. Require PAUs for administration with remote credential guard. LSA protection enabled. Credential guard where supported. Law at the core. 2. Admin is a tool, not a person. Carry separate identities. User, tier 1 admin, tier admin. Protect them with hardware-backed factors and policies that refuse NTLM. Put tier admins in the protected users group. Remove lingering logon locally and RDP rights from admin accounts everywhere except jump hosts. Ceremony, not convenience. 3. Reduce fossil gravity. Disable LM and NTLM v1 entirely. Audit NTLM to discover remaining caves. Enforce SMB signing on clients and servers. Require LDAP channel binding. Prefer Kerberos with precise SPNs. Where NTLM must remain, allow list servers and isolate them in a VLAN that cannot touch tier. Fossils behind glass. 4. Delegation becomes engineered light. Remove unconstrained delegation. Replace with constrained delegation scoped to exact SPNs. Prefer resource-based constrained delegation so targets choose their mirrors. Deny interactive logon to every service account. If a vendor demands an exception, place it behind glass with WDAS or app locker, transcript logging, and change control. 5. Service accounts are vessels with owners. Default to GMSA and SMSA. Rotate as heartbeat. For any static secret, enforce length and scheduled rotation. Restrict logon rights to exact hosts. Remove SPN write permissions from broad groups. Make SPN creation a ticketed event. Quarterly attest. Owner purpose rights. Last rotate date. Delegation targets. 6. Labs everywhere. Unique local administrator passwords on every workstation and server. Rotate regularly. Deny reading labs attributes to anyone outside a small audited group. Pair with remote UAC so local admin tokens do not cross boundaries without intent. Shared local admin dies today. 7. Segment east-west. Workstations cannot win RM to servers by default. Servers cannot RDP to domain controllers. Only jump hosts in a management VLAN may cross to tier and tier 1. Deny by default, allow by purpose, validate rules with flow logs. Every unexpected beam is an alert, not a trivia question. 8. Baselines are law. Apply hardened GPOs. LSA protection. Credential guard. SMB signing always. LDAP channel binding required. WDIgest disabled. Print spooler off on servers that do not print. Legacy protocols removed. PowerShell logging and transcription where risk demands. Sysmin deployed with a curated rule set. Application control on PAWs, DCs, tier servers. 9. Kerberos lives with ritual. Rotate KRBTGT twice on a planned cadence and after compromise. Shorten ticket lifetimes for high-value identities. Enable pack validation on sensitive services that support it. Audit for duplicate or stale SPNs. Remove wildcard targets in delegation. Kerberos armoring where feasible. Time aligned to keys. 10. Monitor chords, not notes. Forward 4768, 4769, 4672, 4662. Replication 4728, 4729, 4732, 4733, 7045, 474. Collect Sysman 1371011. Build correlations. Privileged logon plus SPN spike plus new service equals page now. Tag hosts by tier and patch age. Wait alerts by blast radius. Silences drift 11. Patch by metronome. Cohorts by tier. Canary, then wave. Exceptions expire by date. Dashboards show age. Isolation for nodes that cannot comply. Legacy paths behind proxies with mutual TLS. Compensate loudly. Telemetry amplified. Firewall rules strict. Time is governance. 12. Backups are real or they are fantasy. System state for every DC on schedule. Off the box, immutable. Quarterly lab restore that ends with a new client, trusting the restored DC without manual blessing. ADCS database and keys backed up and tested. GPOs exported. Runbook printed. Phone numbers verified. Roles rehearsed. 13. Practice the fall. Tabletop quarterly. Live fire in lab twice a year. Rebuild a DC. Rotate KRBTGT twice. Reissue a GMSA. Validate pack checks. Measure time to stable orbit. Edit law after every drill. The universe respects rehearsal. 14. Name owners. Every GPO, every service principal, every certificate template, every firewall zone. Ownership in a registry humans can read. Attest quarterly. Orphans are retired, not tolerated. Dead stars still bend light until removed. 15. Close the coercions. Disable the print spooler where unnecessary. Retire SMBV1. Restrict NTLM relay by signing and channel binding. Reduce implicit trust in management protocols. Every coercion trimmed is one less tide, dragging identity outward. 16. Communicate with physics. Change windows defended by leadership. Incident language plain. Scope, confidence, impact, next decision. Reward boring success on time. Post-incident reviews. Revise process, not people. Vendors are held to gravity. Support for GMSA. Signing, binding, modern authentication. Lab echo, low chime. Policy set, SMB signing always. LDAPE channel binding required. Elapse rotation complete. Bass pulse softens. KRBTGT rotation scheduled. Pass 1 in 7 days, pass 2 in 9. You cannot make this universe perfect, but you can make it loud when it bends. You can make privilege ceremonial and drift impatient. You can make collapse reversible. Choose orbit, enforce law, listen early.